Well, there we go. It's 1 minute past 11. Let's begin. So, my name is Daniel O'Brien. I'm one of the directors at Opius. I've had the privilege of working with education leaders for about 25 years now. That sounds an age, doesn't it? But for the last 10 years, my focus has been on creating systems that simplify school self-evaluation, strategic planning, school improvement planning, and trust quality assurance, all of these vital tasks that sometimes get a little bit complicated. And today's webinar, Dashboards with a Difference, is about looking at the most simple, sustainable way that we can use dashboards to gather not necessarily data, but insights. And we'll come to more of that in a moment. So the session we've got, it's going to hopefully last half an hour, depending on questions and answers at the end. We're going to break it down into 3 different sections. Firstly, we're going to look at the abacus model. This fantastic, simple, yet incredibly powerful way of gathering insights. We're then going to look at the online tools that we've created, the iAbacus and MatVista. And then we're going to look at the post-webinar support that we offer you as a participant, as an attendee in this webinar. So, I suppose to start with, why did we call it Dashboards with a Difference? What is the main difference in what we're suggesting or what we're proposing? Well, the main difference really is to do with the fact that the dashboards that we're looking at creating don't necessarily deal with data directly. Data is important and it feeds into these dashboards, but the insights that the dashboards that we're looking at are all about insights, human insight, the professional knowledge and understanding of the colleagues that you work with, the school leaders, the middle leaders, and indeed your teachers. So when we're looking at dashboards today, even though data is a part of the picture, we're really looking at and focusing on really kind of 4 main questions that we can ask our colleagues in schools. Where do you think you are in relation to an aspect of performance or provision in the school or an element of risk? How do you know that you're at that point? Why are you at that point? What's helping and what's hindering, and what do you plan to do about it? So these are vital questions, and they're actual vital questions that are unlocked by using the abacus model. So let's just spend a little bit of time, not a long time, but just, I think it is important that you see this abacus model in action before we look at any of the online tools, because this model, this approach to evaluation, to improvement planning, it underpins the software that we've created. So it was actually designed, this model, by a really good friend of mine. He was a teacher, a head teacher, lead consultant at the National College, and for a short time he was an Ofsted inspector. But for a huge period of his career, he was actually a school improver, an independent consultant that worked hand in hand with school leaders, trust representatives, to help people grow, to help organisations develop strategically, and also help people, school leaders normally, to get a handle on what's happening within the school. And therefore, when you look at this at trust level, the same process can apply at looking at getting a really good level of insight into what's happening in a group of schools. So this model, it's all about breaking things down into understandable chunks or understandable processes or steps. So let's take this abacus, for example. You can actually have an abacus to evaluate and diagnose any kind of provision. So let's say this abacus represented school performance. We might even load it with criteria from an Ofsted framework. So we might have a bead for leadership, or a bead for quality of teaching or personal development within the school. And on an abacus, over here to this right hand side for you, represents outstanding or excellent or low risk or level 4 or world class. This is excellent, this is the area we want to be in, and people could instinctively slide those beads to a specific level. They could say, do you know what, leadership in our school, it's really good, it's over here, but quality of teaching, not so confident. Whatever you want to evaluate, an abacus can be used. But let me just go through the 4 stages that John would guide people through. The same stages or the same questions that we actually ask in the online tool. First question, if you slid that bead over here, What criteria have you based that judgment on? What quality standards, KPIs, challenge questions, what RAG-ratable criteria have you used to inform that judgment that you've instinctively made? Because it is good to look at national standards or criteria or trust characteristics or trust values. What evidence do you have to support that judgment? What can you signpost in your school or in your organisation or in your department or your subject area that really supports that confident judgment you've made? And then this is the heart of the abacus process, I believe. If you slide a bead to a certain position, what are the helping factors that you can list? The things that have got you to that place, the things that are pushing in the right direction. And if you consider the helping factors and also the hindering factors, what's stopping you from being outstanding or excellent? What is it that's stopping you from being low risk? What's pinning you at high risk at the moment? If you know what those hindering factors are, you can do something about it. You can action plan. And this is where we use the abacus to unlock insights. Because effectively what we're doing, we're saying, where are you on this continuum? How do you know? Why are you at that point? And what are you going to do about it? So if we can glean those insights from people using this method, and we can do this electronically in a tool that doesn't kind of become cumbersome and get in the way, then we can start to build these dashboards. So what we've done is taken that model, that thinking process, that guiding process, and put it into an online tool. So let me show you what we've created and what's being used and has been used for the last 10 years in schools and in trusts, in local authorities, in hospitals, care homes. There are so many different organisations using this process and this approach. So let me just open up my browser and share my screen. Okay, just bear with me while I do that. So hopefully everybody can now see my internet browser. And what I'll do is just make sure that I can still see the chat box. Just bear with me. A few screen juggling acts here. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully I can still see everybody down here. And I'm just going to log in. In fact, I've already logged in to the iAbacus tool. Okay, so what you're looking at here is an online abacus. This one here for school self-evaluation and improvement planning. An abacus here if you're a SIAM school and you want to look according to that framework where you stand. We might have an abacus for a maths department in a school. We might have an abacus to look at reading provision in a primary school. You can see there's a similarity the way that these abacuses work. And finally, you might look at safeguarding or child protection and do a risk analysis using an abacus. So when you look at an abacus, what you're actually looking at are areas down the left-hand side, the things that we want people to evaluate, the things that we want people to make judgments on, and then these levels across the top. Okay, but the beauty about an abacus is that it's completely customizable. So already we've got this framework, this model. What we can actually do is create abacuses for certain purposes. So for example, a moment ago I showed this maths one. Now yesterday when I was working on this maths abacus, it had Ofsted criteria across the top, so inadequate through to good through to outstanding. And I showed somebody that literally what we can do is we can customize it, and we can say actually in our trust or in our schools, the developmental language that we want to use is developing, good, or establishing. So quite quickly what you can see here is that these abacuses, we can customize them. We can change them. We can add new areas down the left hand side. If we want our subject leaders or our schools to look at lesson planning or behaviour management, what we can do, we can put that into an abacus and it's there. It's there as an area that we can make a judgment on. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll give you a bit of a whirlwind tour of what this online tool does at kind of operator level. So school leader, subject leader, teacher, how do they use it to kind of self-evaluate and then improve? Basically, they start with a template. Okay, now I'm just going to pick one of our standard templates here. I'm going to pick the Ofsted EIF. It's a good kind of base model for us to use. The way that it works, people pick up the bead, they make a judgment, and much like I did with that original abacus, they slide those beads to make a judgment. Now yes, this is an initial judgment, but you'll see as soon as I put the bead down, it's guiding me through this process, And even though this was an initial judgment based on my gut, my professional understanding of the school or the department or the trust, the first thing it's going to do is ask me to look at criteria. Okay, and it makes sense if we're using an Ofsted template. We've got the Ofsted grade descriptor. If I slide that bead, you'll see here that I get the different criteria that helps me make an accurate judgment. I might look at this and think, actually, in our school, in my subject area, whatever I'm evaluating, we're actually a bit better than I thought. We might be here. Now, the beauty of this this way of working is that if I just move this over here, different templates have different criteria. So if I make a judgment in this template, which is the reading framework, instead of bringing an Ofsted grade descriptor into the abacus, we bring the DFE reading framework with RAG rateable areas. So you can see already when we're asking people to make judgments, we want people to make informed judgments based on criteria. Therefore, we're helping them make accurate judgments. So that first step in the abacus process, quite important. Then we naturally move on to the evidence section. If I make a judgment about being bordering on outstanding or bordering on low risk or almost into excellent, how can I support that judgment with evidence? Lots of schools use different management information systems. They have evidence in different forms. We just centralize it. We just say, okay, signpost the evidence that you already have. So I'll just put some default evidence in here, kind of just some example evidence. You'll see that you can write text descriptions, you can link to files, you can use bullet points, you can make attachments here. I'll just link to some evidence. Maybe it's in Google Drive, maybe it's on the trust management system. We're just signposting anything that supports the judgment. Okay, and people like this because it gives them the freedom to choose what evidence they're going to supply. So we've got our evidence in here. We'll next move on to the analysis. Now, for me, this is a real insightful part of the process. What we're actually doing is saying, okay, you've put the bead at this position. There are going to be things that have helped you get to this point. So list them, celebrate them. We want to know what they are. In fact, if you just jump ahead, if we're going to look at this later in the dashboard, these helping and hindering factors that people put into the system, these are the things that are going well across the trust or across the school. So this is a vital step to get our leaders to engage with. What's helping? What's hindering? Often people are better at listing the problems, the things, the issues, the barriers. So we put them in here. If there is something that's a big issue in our school or in our trust or in our department, individuals can say, okay, this is a big issue, whatever it is, let's put that to the top of the list. That's something we need to prioritize. The diagnostic process sets up the action planning. Okay, essentially, these are the things we need to strengthen. These are the things that we need to weaken or get rid of. We can't work on everything, so let's be strategic. Let's hide some of these issues. They're not things we need to focus on at the moment, but if there is something that we need to work on, we can prioritize it. We can jump into the planning and we can say, right, what are we going to do about it? Now, can you see that natural step here? We've gone from making a judgment, diagnosing the issues, to then putting in what we're going to do about it. And in here, it's just a very simple planning strip. What we're going to do, who's going to lead on that, what is our success criteria, how do we know when we're making an impact, is there a deadline, have we actually done some work on this already? Maybe we've started this, maybe we've engaged with a training provider or working with another school, so we can put that in here. So this is the abacus model. Just recap very quickly. People make judgments about certain levels of performance or effectiveness. They're then guided through this process where they check criteria to make sure those judgments are accurate. They supply evidence to justify the judgment. That's a natural step. They think about the helping and hindering factors, and then they plan actions to tackle the issues or strengthen the helping factors. Now, this empowers people. It like coaches them through an improvement process, but all the time it's gathering those insights. Yes, you can share this as a PDF document, and often that's what school leaders will do. They'll bring these to meetings, they'll talk with trustees, with governors. These are brilliant reports, okay? They've got the evidence, the analysis, the action planning. But what we really want our school leaders or our middle leaders or our teachers to do is to share these online. Okay, so when somebody has an abacus and they work on it, we want them actually to collaborate with others. So yes, we empower people, but we want them to share those insights, maybe with their peers. So you might have a group of maths leaders sharing their abacuses to look at maths provision, or head teachers sharing them with each other. But in reality, what we want them to do is to send those or share them with the central team, maybe the executive head teacher or maybe the CEO of the trust, depending on your structure and your organisational structure, or even your size. That depends on how these are shared. But let's say that now happens, okay, those abacuses are shared, just literally people invite collaborators. Let's say let's look at this at school level to start with. If you're a head teacher and people share those subject abacuses with you, so your middle leaders, they share them with you at school level, one of the things that you can do is just overlay them. You can just bring them all together and say, actually, these are the beads that represent our subject performance across the school. Already now we're starting to gather insights. If you want, you could call this a dashboard, because we're looking at gathered information, insights, across a group of subject leaders. Now in a moment, I'm going to show you how this ramps up when we do it at trust level. So this is still within the school. I can look at all of these beads. I see that there are 3 subject leaders that have put themselves in outstanding when it comes to teaching and learning and assessment. Who are they? The business studies department. What's their evidence for that judgment? What supports that judgment? What was their analysis? What were the helping factors that have got them to that point? Are they similar helping factors to our other leaders within the school? And how are they going to sustain that performance with their action plan? But you can see, depending on the type of thinker you are, you might be kind of thinking, okay, I don't like to see these red beads down here. Who are they? Physics department or maths department? What was their evidence for that? What were the helping and hindering factors? You'd be interested in those hindering factors because you'd want to know what was holding that department back and what they were going to do about it in the action planning. So our overlays are the first type of dashboard that we look at. The stacks, we call them stacks because physically it feels like you're stacking abacuses on top of each other. So these are the stacks. These are very revealing because they show the beads in context. I can see the beads here and maybe where they sit in conjunction to the other beads. Again, all the time I'm just gathering insights and looking at those. I'm actually able to create PDF reports as well. So much like the school leader or the subject leader might just create a report for their own abacus, as a trust leader or a head teacher, I can export this and I can create a PDF document. It might be a school-wide summary. I won't put a title in there, I'll just put that in for the moment. But you can see here, what I'm starting to do now is gather my insights and then share them with the PDF documentation. Let's look at this now at trust level, okay? Because that is the process: self-evaluation, improvement planning, and then creating those overlays. If I now log in as a trust leader, okay, it's roughly going to be the same process, because all I've done is empower others with the same tool. Let me just set this so it's a little bit smaller and then go back to the home screen. All I'm able to do is empower others and give them an abacus, literally one of these, and ask them to slide the beads and follow the process. But then when I bring them together at trust level, you can see now we're actually kind of amplifying the level of insight that we're going to gain. So let's say, for example, we looked at trust-wide evaluations. Okay, I might have a group of academies or group of departments. I might overlay those onto one central abacus, and all of a sudden now I'm looking at a particular aspect of provision. I think these are statements from the MAC Quality Assurance Framework that I might have asked head teachers to make a judgment on. And you can see in here, this framework quite nicely uses a red through to green levelling. So we ask our school leaders to make judgments, or we facilitate that with an executive head teacher that maybe does that in visits, in observing and working with them, and then we overlay it centrally. And what we have is the ability to look at this information and then dive down deeper into it. Okay, if I just go back to my home screen, what we might look at here are reading reviews across the trust. So if you're a trust with primary schools who might have a focus on reading and phonics, you distribute an abacus to your reading leaders. They complete it as part of their professional development and as part of their leadership of that department, and actually it's an empowering process in doing so. What you're able to do maybe as a trust reading lead, in fact I just need to go back a step, just bear with me because I just chose one of the abacuses rather than all of them. What I need to do is click select all and then overlay to compare. And what I'm looking at now is reading provision across the trust. So I can see still got a few schools that are struggling. I can dive into those, and much like I did at school level, at trust level, what I'm now looking at are judgments supported by evidence. We know there's going to be analysis behind each bead because we've got the helping and hindering factors, and then the action planning. So these abacuses, this is where you gain the insights. We have abacuses for all different aspects of performance. The beauty of the abacus model as well is that you can tailor those abacuses. So often we will work with multi-academy trusts where they will say, okay, we want to have schools do their self-evaluation and improvement planning using the Ofsted EIF. We've also got quite a few schools that have to evaluate using the SIAMS framework. We're naturally interested in safeguarding, but we've got our own trust characteristics. So actually, what we want schools to be doing is evaluating all of these things, and we don't necessarily want separate systems and separate processes to do this. The abacus model makes sense because if you think about it, we're asking, where are you? How do you know? Why are you at that point? What are you going to do about it? So can we use an abacus to centrally do that? So some of our most current work is working with trusts to develop abacuses that meet their needs. So for example here, if I overlay these abacuses, you'll see these are quite unique. We have the Ofsted EIF. We then have characteristics that trust has a focus on, natural areas that you're interested in, teaching practice, culture and ethos, safeguarding. And then even into this abacus, we can build in SIAMS areas, character, ethos, the culture of the school. So abacuses, completely customizable, gather insights, and you can create overlays and create dashboards from them. Finally, just before we open up for questions and answers, I'd just like to show you that often a great deal of time at central team level in a trust is spent preparing to present to trustees or to stakeholders, and actually the abacus model, because we're gathering insights, it's sometimes those insights that we need to share, but you need to do it in a controlled, restricted manner. So one of the things that you can do is to export a PDF of a certain aspect of provision. So let's say we were looking at something specific. So we were doing a specific cross-trust review, okay? And in the options here, what I might do is say, actually, what we're really looking at here is, and I might say, we're looking at behaviour in our schools and teaching practice. Okay, they're the two areas that we want to focus on. It's very easy to create that PDF document that summarises the bead positions, the evidence, the analysis, the action planning on those particular areas that you choose. So you can just create a PDF for that meeting in the form of a slideshow or printable document. That saves a great deal of time. And actually, when you go into those meetings, you then know that when you put that report in front of people, or you probably have shared it prior to the meeting, you're not getting distracted looking at all the other areas. You're focused on a discussion about the level of efficiency, effectiveness, performance on those certain aspects that you've selected. So we find that trusts value the way that we can gather insights, the way that we can glean from the abacus overlays, and then the way that we can share the information in the form of those PDFs. So we've covered quite a lot of ground there. I'd just like to talk about the post-webinar support that we might offer you and you might take advantage of. So first of all, as you may have read in the description, we want to work with your school. We're open to giving you sufficient user licenses that you can work with 3 of your schools. We will work on your templates for you. So if you want something quite specific, if you want us to create a trust dashboard based on your own criteria or based on and the Ofsted EIF, or based on a SIAMS framework, or based on your trust characteristics, then that is something that we're more than happy to do. That really would last for about 3 months, okay, because we think that's enough time to pilot a project, get people on board and glean some really good insights. After that, we'd love it if you took one of our support packages, engage with us in a more commercial way, but we're willing for you to taste it, to see that it works, and to prove that actually you can gather some fantastic insights using these iAbacus dashboards. So if that's something you're interested in, please contact us afterwards. My email address is dan@opius.org. I'll put that out to everybody on email. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A. I'll just open those up. We've got those on screen now. I can see a few messages. We have a quick scan read of those. Brilliant. Okay, a few people are probably going to take us up on the pilot project. I'm a big believer, in the proof of the pudding is in the tasting, so it's okay seeing me whirlwind demo these systems, but the proof will come when we can engage your head teachers, get your middle leaders motivated to self-review and to do deep dives into their own subjects, really get people engaged with something that unlocks a lot of their strategic thinking, but then shares that with you as trust leaders. So thank you very much for your time. I can't see any more questions coming in. Feel free to contact me. I'm more than happy to jump back onto Teams, onto Zoom, onto Google Meet to talk about this with your central teams and with your school leaders. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for attending.